me start by thanking you for being part of this program today, because today is 27 years after June 12th. Yeah. Now, let me go straight to this, if I may ask you, sir. Where were you on the date of the annulment of June 12, 1993 election when it was announced by Babangida's military regime, sir?
I was in Lagos.
Interesting.
I was in Lagos, yes. 1993, I was in Lagos. Was working with the Civil Liberties Organization. I was a member of the Campaign for Democracy. Yeah, I was in Lagos, in short. Let me just put it that way. I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty later, but I was in Lagos.
Now, let me ask you, I mean, based on what happened that very day when Babangida's military regime annulled that election, was there any justification for the derailment of the collective hope of Nigerians?
Well, actually, you know what? You know, it's been a while, like you said. Actually, I wasn't in Nigeria. I was in Lagos. I take that back.
All right. Yeah, I remember you had to go on exile at some point in time.
No, that was much later. That was much later. What happened was that I was a part of the delegation of CLO for the second UN conference, World Conference on Human Rights in Vienna. Okay. And it was while we were there in Vienna, I remember this now precisely, while we were there in Vienna, that the annulment was announced. June 1993, yes. I mean, I remember it because the Bosnian War was still raging, Sarajevo, and I remember also that the day we were supposed to travel for the event, we were at the airport together, and they had stopped him. And by then, at that particular moment, my name had not entered the list of those who were not to pass through the airport. So I was able to travel that day, even though I was giving some hassles. But anyway, those are long stories. But so I was in Vienna, you know, I was in Vienna. Then when we returned, that was when all the rest followed, the mobilization, you know, for protest, you know, in the streets and so on and so forth.
Could you share your thoughts on the shock and the disappointment that became the primary inspiration for the fight against the June 12 annulment, sir?
Right from Vienna, the shock was palpable. As you know, the whole world was already on tenterhooks about Nigeria.
Yeah.
And the hope was that an election would be some safe way of getting out of the quagmire, out of the debacle. You know, this long-running military dictatorship, scores of prisoners, political prisoners, and so on. So when the annulment came, it was a shock. You know, it was a shock to the whole world. And then when we got back, at that time, we in the Campaign for Democracy, which was led by the late Alao Aka Bashorun, and then later on, you know, Bekor and some Kuti, you know, and then Chima Ubani and all of us who were in the pro-democracy movement, let's just put it that way, we had actually called for boycotting of the elections. Because if you remember, the words that Alao Aka Bashorun and the interim national government, which was propounding an interim national government in place of the military, so that would then prepare for genuine elections, starting with a sovereign national conference, they had been harping on the fact that the military had a hidden agenda, that Babangida had a hidden agenda. So the annulment of the election simply proved that there was a hidden agenda after all. And on the basis of that, we had actually called for a boycott of the election. But once the election took place, and as we all say now, entered the annals of elections in Nigeria as the freest in Nigeria and most peaceful. So we felt a need to now be on the side of the people, especially when the treachery of Babangida had come out, the treachery of the military had come out. So it was outrage. The streets were literally reverberating with outrage, with anger. You know, you could feel it in the air that this was taking the people too far. You know, this was taking people for granted too far. Babangida had overdone it. He had overplayed his hand. And how much more were we going to take before we would revolt? So I think Nigeria was ready for a revolt. The whole international community was, you know, up to here, up to the throat, you know, sick and tired of the shenanigans of Babangida military dictatorship. So it was anger and, in fact, the vehemence with which people expressed their anger at a point was quite shocking, So it was anger, frustration, annoyance, and I tell you, palpable, very palpable in the air at that time.
That's interesting. Let's fast forward to June 6, 2018, when President Muhammadu Buhari actually shocked Nigerians. You heard about the decision that June 12 now was actually Democracy Day, and that statement actually coming from the president. What were your first thoughts? And is that enough to heal the wounds that the June 12, 1993 debacle has caused for our national psyche?
Like all symbolic actions, it's never enough. But symbolism is very, very important. Human beings were beings of symbols. And the fact that MK Abiola can be president again, the fact that our march to democracy was set back not only by from 1993 to 1999, it's also that the dictatorship that even succeeded him, which was that of Abacha, was even more brutal than the corruption and the theft. So the wound to the psyche of Nigeria even got deeper. So if Babangida has stuck a knife, in our heart, in the political heart of Nigeria, Abacha kept turning that knife in all that time that he was in power, from after he shoved Shonekon aside and bared his teeth and became the strongman. From then to 1999, we endured, so it was a prolonged trauma that we experienced. So nothing can heal that. However, the recognition of June 12 as Democracy Day, rather than the treacherous and self-serving May 29th that Obasanjo had decided will be Democracy Day, serves as a kind of balm on the wound. But even when the wound has healed, there's a scar. The scar is still there. But at least the making of June 12 as Democracy Day, acknowledgement of that, in a way, serves as a balm on that wound, so that whenever the scar itches, we feel the balm of June 12 Democracy Day, soothing it.
Now, let's look at the presidential address this morning. In the presidential assessment, in your own assessment, sir, the president actually stated that he has promised to formally address the nation's daunting challenges, especially with regards to insecurity, economy, and corruption. What's your assessment of this president's actions as far as the significance of today is concerned with regards to his performance so far?
Well, this is what I'm going to say. Nigeria has gone so far, fallen so far deep in the gutter, that expectations are giant size. Literally every part of the society is in need of a major act of, how shall I put it now, rebirth, rejuvenation, a return of hope and expectation, so that it is going to be very hard to deal with all those issues and to the level where ordinary citizens can feel that change has actually come. They measure it in terms of the bottom line, in terms of being able to pay their rent, school fees, take care of their health, clothe themselves, move from point A to point B, and still have a little something beside. But we all know that that's not the story in Nigeria today. Now, in terms of corruption, it's so pervasive or so massive that, as you can see, there have been some convictions. As you can see, there have been, the efforts to recuperate some monies without necessarily going to the whole hog of a trial, which can drag on and on. We may have our arguments about whether plea bargains are good in the end or not. But a lot of that has happened. But is it enough to make that kind of dent in the perception of the general public that corruption is now being wrestled to the ground, I don't think it's there yet. But I don't think we can fault the effort. Now, part of the problem also is that we have a legal system, that is adversarial.
Yeah.
In other words, if you make a charge, if the accused, the prosecutor must prove his case beyond reasonable doubt, and there are two sides. There are two sides. It's not administrative. There are two sides. It's one for and one against. So, and then all the technicalities. We are all witnesses to what highly paid lawyers do, especially SAMs do, to frustrate cases, high-profile cases especially. Now, if you then say, okay, if we rely on the courts and the judicial system, it's going to be too slow, and therefore the perception will be that President Buhari is not fighting corruption, and therefore resorts to what you may call extrajudicial measures, administrative measures. Take, for instance, the case of the Supreme Court justices. Then the accusations will also come again that he's going back to his old military dictator self. So it is very hard to win this battle on a clean slate or in a kind of straightforward way without having to navigate too many obstacles along the way in a democracy until we do something fundamental in reforming the judicial, especially the criminal judicial administration of justice system. Not only in terms of the law, because we do have the Administration of Justice, Criminal Justice Act, which has done a whole lot of things, yes, but in terms of the personnel and the physical infrastructure for delivering justice under that law, we're supposed to make it swifter to be able to do away with criminal cases. But if you don't have the personnel, the physical infrastructure, even sometimes also the software in terms of how up to date, how fit for the 21st century our procedures and processes of administration of justice are. So
I crave your indulgence, sir. Let me quickly quote from part of the president's address. Still talking about the rule of law. He said that this administration is focused on ensuring that Nigeria will always be governed by the rule of law, and that he will uphold the Constitution and protect the lives and property of all Nigerians. In fact, he stated that government has initiated a number of policies and programs designed to promote the legal rights of Nigeria and facilitate the institution of a responsive legal system. Those were the statements of it. From your assessment and from a legal perspective, has President Buhari so far upheld the rule of law as far as this country is concerned?
In general, yes. There are those instances that we all quarrel with. And I think even the government itself, within government itself, they must have realized how much they goofed and brought embarrassment to itself in the case of Showore. That instance did not speak of strict adherence to the rule of law. And my problem is that here, if we look as if I'm going to be, as it were, defending the president. But I think I can stick out my neck, go on a limb and do it, because this is something that the professionals, the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice ought to have taken charge of right from day one. He got copious advice. So even when the first steps have been taken, got copious advice to enter a nolle prosequi. And he actually argued against it. So I think and then down to the charges, which are ludicrous, for the charges like insulting the president, for instance, So I think when we turn our attention to cases like that of Showore, the arrest, and then the bail granted, and then, then still held and so on. Yes, you say no, this flies in the face of the solemn declaration that the president is making. But in general, at least for people like us who lived under the military, who were harassed on a daily basis, who were jailed, and some were killed and maimed, and when Decree 2, which was the preventive detention decree, and beyond Decree 2, literally every decree could not be challenged in court, prevented judicial review, and prevented habeas corpus, that is bail procedure, then we would say, in general, the democratic government we've had, whether under Obasanjo or under Yaradua or under Jonathan and now to Buhari, have adhered to the rule of law. But there have been always instances where that has been challenged, where it seemed the government was straying away, from a commitment to defense of the rule of law. So I can't give the government 100%, definitely. I don't think we can give any government 100%, but I think in general, they've adhered to that commitment to the rule of law.
Now, considering the significance of June 12 itself, as far as the national question is concerned, what will you want to tell President Muhammadu Buhari at this time in terms of good governance? Because when we look at the state of insecurity, the state of the security architecture of the country itself, and the adherence to the rule of law, and the equitable sharing of offices, what will you be your advice if we are to respect the significance of June 12 as far as Nigeria's democratic future is concerned, sir?
June 12 was a unifying moment in Nigeria. Even though we might scoff at electoral politics and liberal democracy and say that neoliberalism had turned it into the rule of the powerful or money, democracy, money bag politics, and so on, still, June 12 represented something because it seemed to be that moment when, not it seemed, it was that moment when Nigerians showed that left to themselves, without the manipulation of politicians, they don't care about your religious belief or your ethnic origin or your social status, but that they care about Nigeria. So we had a Muslim ticket. Theoretically, that should have been forbidden. That should have been a taboo, a political taboo. But what did we get? North and South, East and West, united and voted convincingly for that Muslim ticket. Now, if therefore Nigerians do not really care deep down about our various ethnic and religious cleavages, then it means that we have that as a model for whatever else we're going to do. And that is the great symbolism of June 12 that we're talking about. It enabled us to show who we are without the manipulations, the selfishness of politicians masquerading as it were, fighting for their people, but which then continuously pits us against each other. Ethnic group against ethnic group, religious faith against religious faith, and so on and so forth. So that is a great thing that June 12 represents. And that is a great thing that in Buhari, President Buhari recognizing it and making it Democracy Day says to us that this is the thing we should value and hold up as the symbol of democracy for us. Now, if that's the case, why is it that the elections we've had since then have not lived up to the promise, that lofty ideal of June 12, that hope of June 12? I think part of it has got to do with the people whom the system is throwing up to run for offices, high offices, for some reason, lack that will to be Nigerians first and do everything possible to put Nigeria first. And two, to be less self-serving, which is probably the other side of the coin, to be less self-serving. When you have a higher goal, a higher principle to meet, and if that higher goal is the unity of Nigeria, we are one nation, fairness, and equity and justice, social justice for all, make the wealth of the nation be at the service and welfare of the people. If you have that in mind, then you will be less inclined to dig into our enclaves and try to play our differences. So individual advantage. So that is the thing I feel we're losing sight of regarding June 12. And it will require now a leader, in the case of President Buhari, who has now justly recognized June 12, to begin to lead the people, inspire the citizenry towards that unity. So it is easier then to speak in condemnation of, say, the whole insecurities we are facing in the country, especially those in the South, with regard to herdsmen invading their lands, taking over their lands right from the Middle Belt down to the South, even down to Delta State, where I am here. I'm sure you've seen the recent new reports coming out and so on. And then two, that then in the North, because it's also becomes very bad in the North too, even in his home state of Katsina, you know. So it becomes easier for him to speak in the language of the leader of all Nigeria. And in quote unquote, although I hate using that, father of the nation, because I say quote unquote because inverted commas, because that language begins to tend towards cultivation of personality cults, you know, and yeah, you know, but at least to speak for the whole nation. You can see it is in the North, it's in the South, it's in the East and the West. Let's bring this country together. And I think eventually, for anyone who is sincere about moving this country forward in that direction towards attaining the hope and aspiration of June 12, we are going to have to settle, we are going to have to deal with the question of a sovereign national conference, where the people decide for the first time as a sovereign people, Nigerians, that this is the way we want the country to be. And we have a new articles of association that can truly answer to we, the people. We, the people, not a few people handpicked or pushed forward through a rigged and fraudulent system then to speak on our behalf. And I think once we've done that, a lot of these rooms, all these things that create rooms for exploitation of differences and so on, will be done away with. You know, if people feel secure in their cultural environment and they know that nobody is threatening them, nobody is taking away from them what belongs to them, and whatever goes to the public purse, when it comes back to them, it's coming back in a way that is fair, that we have all agreed upon, And then a lot of all these causes for friction and that explode at some point now and then, you know, into national crisis, you know, civil disturbances and so on, will be taken away.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ogaga Ifowodo, for your insightful analysis. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being on Sahara TV, sir.
Thank you very much.